So welcome back to another payment talk. I'm really excited today to have a different insight actually. So I'd like to introduce to you the CEO of PayX, an analysis and consultancy company based all over the world. But my guest today is in Singapore. So Adrian Hausser, welcome to Payment Talks.
Thanks for having me, Nick.
The Asian financial services and payments market is really driving a lot of change in all sorts of ways. But one of the things that's really fascinating is the rise of kind of lifestyle applications and ecosystems that we've seen from Tencent and Alibaba. How do you see those marketplaces emerging and evolving?
So yeah, you're right. Asia seems to be a rapidly accelerating part of the world in many aspects, but one of them being the marketplaces, which are now second nature, and with literally hundreds of millions of people in some of these marketplaces. So people are literally, you mentioned lifestyle, so people are literally getting up in the morning. And the first thing they do is going into WeChat by Tencent, as an example, but there's plenty of others. And apparently the average is about 3 to 4 hours a day they spend inside this ecosystem on average.
And payments is just everyone's very excited about WeChat Pay and Alipay, but payments is just a little piece of these ecosystems, right? It's not the core of them, and it's something that needs to happen to be able to keep the consumers inside the marketplace.
Yeah, it's basically the final part or a part in the value chain of commerce. So how do you monetize these marketplaces? Then commerce is a key part, and payment is a key element in that. So payments is critical, that it's got to work. But these marketplaces are all about, as you said, the consumers and the lifestyle of the consumers, and really adding value to those consumers. And the power of what they've got, are joining the dots. And in Asia, a good example is the fragmentation around loyalty. So you've got many banks, many cards, same thing you have in many parts of the world, but here it's sort of even more fragmented. And what we see is that there are lots of people offering different coupons, lots of applications about how you can find discounts, etc. And in Asia, people have a culture of looking for best price and negotiation. And so they're attracted to these types of mechanisms for increasing commerce. Sure. So what these marketplaces have done have actually taken the sort of Apple Wallet to a next level. Not only do you load your cards in, but you also load other elements of your lifestyle. So your loyalty cards,
all of your offers,
and they see what you're doing in terms of travel, for example, when people were traveling.
Yeah.
So they'll see which airlines you go on, and they'll because you go to the airlines inside the marketplace.
Yes.
They're all partners inside the marketplace. So they watch what you're shopping for. They watch what your preferences are.
People are holding balances inside of the applications as well, right? So you can have
absolutely
balances inside of Alipay or WeChat Pay.
Yeah, absolutely. And so over time, they're not looking, as in the payments world, at transactions per second. They're looking at interactions.
Okay.
So the value is in the behavior and what the people do.
Okay.
It's not necessarily in the final actions. It's in what do they look for, how do they behave, and therefore, when you've got the right level of capability and the right understanding of your consumers, you can then actually start to replicate that behavior. So when you present something as an opportunity for that consumer,
Yeah.
you're not doing it in a very dumb sort of marketing way. You're actually picking perfect timing of behavior.
Micro-targeted.
Yeah, ranging from literally people's behavior is they get up in the morning, they have coffee, and they go read the news, for example.
Yeah.
And they might look at what deals are available. And so these marketplaces are fine-tuned to the point they know that consumer does that at that time, and then they trickle feed the right sort of things at the right time, the right behavior.
And do you think as these models move out of markets like China and they move into Western markets, that they'll begin to attract more regulatory scrutiny? Or are they already attracting regulatory scrutiny inside of China, for example?
So Ant Financial, as an example, has over 30 billion revenue, and they do investments per year over 30 billion.
Wow.
And Tencent, as an example, has hundreds of companies all around the world that it has investments in and some sort of stakeholder involvement with. So they're into everything from biotech through to space, everything.
Okay.
And they're utilizing all the experiences into basically their technology platforms. So what they did in China was that they realized the power of these platforms, and then they created core businesses and they also did partnerships, and their definition of a partnership was something that had applicability for less than 1 billion people. If it was more than 1 billion people, then they would do that as a core business.
Okay.
So they set up they set up insurance companies, banks. They did all sorts of businesses, and then what they found was that they needed to expand outside of China and even outside of Asia, and they realized the localization aspects. And so, in order to avoid and navigate the sort of localization and regulatory and all those different challenges you have around the world, they've now got a strategy where they are the technology platform.
Right. And somebody else is kind of a regulated entity.
And in the local area or a local region. And to give you an idea of the capability of their platform, most organizations we work with around the world are talking about doing more with AI, or doing something with AI.
Yeah.
In Ant Financial, I asked when I was talking to them to talk to the guy that runs the AI area, and the response I got was, well, there isn't one. And I was confused. and the answer was, there's 16 of them.
Wow.
Okay. And forgive the pun, but there's Chinese walls between each AI division.
Okay.
Because the models and the technologies and the people do not associate with each other, because they generate their own custom and direction.
Wow.
And so they go forward developing that, and then they merge and take the best results out of the analysis of the data. And so that's the capability of their platforms, and that's why the value add they can deliver is quite extraordinary.
So I guess the closest thing that many people in Europe or in the US might have experienced in terms of this kind of ecosystem would be something like Facebook. So I guess it's no coincidence that they seem to be pushing into commerce, right? We saw the launch of WhatsApp Pay in Brazil briefly before the Brazilian regulator stepped in and closed it down again last week. So how do you see that playing out, that the GAFAs, Googles, Apples, Facebooks, Amazons of this world will step into that market? Or do you think that technology providers from out of China and Asian markets will move in?
I think what we're going to see is that, and certainly the stated strategy of people like Ant is that going to go around the rest of the world offering their technology platform. And if there's sovereign issues on data, etc., then they have no problem installing what they've got, replicating instances locally, etc.
On-prem instances, okay.
And certainly when a lot of the work we're doing with the sort of incumbent tier one players, banks around the world, they're on a journey from sort of where they are today, almost reinventing themselves to a very different place going forward. And that's an incredibly large, brave journey to do, and they're on that journey. What's interesting is if they fully understand the capability of these Asian marketplaces, then these guys have got 10 years plus experience on how to develop a marketplace, how to run it, how to monetize it, and they come with ready-made technology platforms. And they're open arms to partnering with these incumbents who basically own the markets that they operate in. They have the customer bases and they have the trust in the brands, but they don't have the platform,
the capability.
And they don't have the business models.
Yeah.
And the technology almost comes last, because it's even if you gave a bank an Amazon tomorrow and all the technology, it still doesn't mean that they could actually operate it profitably.
Sure.
There's a hell of a lot in there to get right, to manage that and keep it expanding. So, and that's the experience that the Asian marketplaces have for many years now.
So it's like a step change for a market in a box. If they, if you get this kind of cooperation between an incumbent brand stroke customer base and these technology platforms.
Yeah, and you just hit the nail on the head. That's the biggest challenge, is because in the world, Western world, people are understanding what AI is more and more, and they're seeing some use cases, etc. And some of them are getting excited in some areas of their organization, but they have no concept of using AI across their whole enterprise next year. So when you start to talk about you can do this, it's very, very difficult for them to comprehend how that is real.
Adrian, I would love to talk more about that. I think how AI interacts, generally with the world and particularly with financial services is a fantastic topic. Maybe we'll have to have a second bite of the cherry another time, but right now we are out of time. So I'd just like to thank you very much for joining me from Singapore, I hope to speak to you soon.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks.